Throughout 2018, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly focused its attention on issues such as migration, cybersecurity, terrorism, arms control, fake news, and climate change. The OSCE PA's Ad Hoc Committee on Countering Terrorism and the Ad Hoc Committee on Migration continued their active engagement through field visits, and the Assembly observed elections in 8 countries, including a first-ever mission to Italy. The PA actively expanded relations with partners, including the United Nations, the European Union, the International Organization for Migration, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, and the Interparliamentary Union. Georgian parliamentarian George Tsereteli was elected president of the Assembly at the annual session in Berlin.
We should all work to strengthen the OSCE. We must let people know the value of this organization and why it matters.
In 2 visits to Ukraine, President Tsereteli reiterated support for Ukraine's territorial integrity and renewed calls for reaching a sustained ceasefire. Leading an OSCE PA delegation to areas on the front line in eastern Ukraine in May, Tsereteli stressed that urgent steps must be taken to alleviate the humanitarian situation of people impacted by the conflict. In a visit to Moldova, Tsereteli lauded achievements in the Transnistrian settlement process and encouraged Chisinau and Tiraspol to sustain the momentum of progress to create conditions for a comprehensive resolution of the conflict. The Assembly increased its engagement on regional and thematic issues through the work of its special representatives on mediation, human trafficking issues, Mediterranean affairs, gender issues, anti-Semitism, racism and intolerance, Southeast Europe, and Central Asia. Special representatives were active throughout the year, conducting diplomatic visits, delivering addresses at various fora, and issuing reports and statements. The Ad Hoc Committee on Migration, chaired by Belgian parliamentarian Nahima Landry, conducted working visits to Belgium, Serbia, Denmark, and Sweden. Ad hoc committee members met with migration authorities, local officials, border police, school administrators, the international community, civil society, and migrants and refugees to assess current developments and identify best practices.
It's very useful that members of parliament come together, and as we do in this migration committee, and discuss about the theme. We were, for instance, in Belgium and in Serbia, and there we can pick up some best practices, and these best practices can also be taken in the home country to see them and to make some new laws.
The OSCE PA's Ad Hoc Committee on Countering Terrorism was active throughout 2018. Makis Voridis, chair of the Ad Hoc Committee, addressed the OSCE Security Committee twice and held extensive bilateral meetings with counterparts from the OSCE's executive structures in Vienna, underlining the need to work together to effectively counter violent extremism, radicalization, and terrorism.
So what we want to do is to agree on exercising this kind of parliamentary control on specific aspects that concern security, and then start asking questions to the governments in 57 different governments, parliamentarians coming from the OSCE PA, asking questions and trying to see whether this legislation has been adopted or implemented.
Voridis was in the United States in December, visiting UN headquarters and meeting with the UN's Office on Counterterrorism and the Security Council's Counterterrorism Committee. A comprehensive resolution on counterterrorism was adopted at the annual session in Berlin, which endorsed a whole-of-society approach and emphasized the need for joint and coordinated efforts to counter terrorism and prevent violent extremism. Some 300 parliamentarians came together in the Bundestag for the 27th annual session under the theme Implementing OSCE Commitments, the Role of Parliaments. In Berlin, the 3 general committees of the OSCE PA adopted resolutions dealing with topics including Ukraine, populism, protracted conflicts, the environmental impacts of war, and human trafficking. Resolutions adopted by the PA emphasized that rebuilding trust in the OSCE area is needed to effectively counter security challenges facing the region. The PA identified corruption, climate change, energy security, environmental migration, and internal displacement as the most urgent challenges facing the OSCE area in the economic and environmental dimension. In the human dimension, the PA emphasized that national parliaments need to confirm their commitment to human rights. Members raised concern over political prisoners, freedom of religion, and the rights of migrants and refugees. The session culminated in the adoption of the 2018 Berlin Declaration, highlighting priority topics by parliamentarians as input to the OSCE's Ministerial Council. Hosted by the Jurguku Kanesh, the Assembly's 17th autumn meeting included a parliamentary conference on promoting security dialogue in Central Asia and beyond, and a Mediterranean forum on geopolitics of Central Asia and the Mediterranean, addressing migration, trade, and environmental challenges. The OSCE PA gathered for its 17th winter meeting on 22-23 February in the Hofburg Congress Center in Vienna. Some 240 parliamentarians from 53 countries participated in the winter meeting. OSCE PA thematic conferences were held throughout the year, dealing with topics such as the victims of terrorism, ethnic conflict prevention, and cybersecurity.
Technologies are bringing many good things, like electronic commerce, business opportunities, education, even diplomatic issues now solved by digital diplomacy. But it also brings, it could bring also many threats, like a radicalization, helping terrorists sometimes, and in hands of, let's say, bad people, it becoming a very, very dangerous weapon. So we politicians talking about cybersecurity, and not only talking about raising awareness, shaping policies, proving and adopting resolutions and new legislation, so we're adding value.
OSCE PA members contributed their political experience, judgment, and visibility to OSCE election observation, working closely with experts from the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights and other international partners. The OSCE PA deployed election observation missions to 8 countries in 2018: Italy, Russia, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, the United States, and Armenia.
This shows that we have no double standards. We don't observe elections normally in the traditional country we have observed in the past, but we also go to other countries where we think there are no issues, but we do not want to have an assembly that has any double standards. So we observe east and west of Vienna.
The Assembly concluded its year of activities with high-level participation at the OSCE Ministerial Council in Milan. The Bureau met on the eve of the Ministerial for discussions on current international issues, including the escalation of tensions between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. President Tsereteli addressed the opening session of the Ministerial Council and met on the margins with the foreign ministers of Turkey, Russia, Albania, and Moldova. Topics of discussion included election observation methodology, counterterrorism, strengthening the OSCE, and confidence-building measures, with the President emphasizing that the PA will always insist on the full implementation of international agreements such as the Helsinki Final Act.